People have always been fascinated by the likes of dragons, and some have stories of their own. Legends and tales that boggle the mind and show us just how important and powerful these beings are. I'm glad you could join me this evening. See, I'm thinking of cataloguing some of these dragons, and I want you to see my first draft. This is my first on this topic, a volume 0 if you will, to see if people are interested in hearing the cliff notes alone about the tales of these dragons. They take on all forms and roles, with all sorts of powers and scale, from the monsters of the mountain that hide in nests and dwell in caves, to demigods. And I think I'll start with the latter. There are perhaps no dragons within Scoured Land that are as famous as the two demigods. Hjolgund and Fjolgund, the children of the god Harvind, both protectors and guardians of the Scoured Lands, but with a one-sided rivalry that will never end. See, the older brother, Harvind, is far wiser and stronger than his younger brother, but that does not stop Fjolgund from trying to take his titles constantly in order to prove himself in the eyes of his family. The two rarely, if ever, put their differences aside, and often come to blows over trivial things, like any squabbling siblings do. The sad thing is, Hjolgund is almost always victorious, casting his brother aside and making many cracks in the mountains alone. But they are both still sacred to the people of this land. But although they are both old and ancient, and although they seem like ironwings, they actually predate ironwings as we know them, hence why they look a little different in their anatomy. But there is another dragon sent by divine beings. The night snagger, known as Lofnir, was sent by the sun god Mjolnir himself in order to protect the Skalvig temple, and he does so loyally, never wavering in his duties. He is also the only temple guardian dragon that fought in the Eventide and survived unscathed by the conflict. But he does not view himself as a fighter, for he is a smith and protector of the forge, first and foremost. A bizarrely amazing blacksmith, given his dragonic body. He also guides many phantoms in blacksmithing arts, as long as he thinks they're worthy. There is also another temple guardian with such interest that survived the Eventide as well, although this is simply because he missed it, as he was in a great slumber at the time, is Venthir, a rage-filled dragon who mourns the loss of his temple of Hjolgun. Its original inhabitants lost to time and died just as he was getting to love them. He now uses his rage, with the help of the phantoms, to reap revenge on those who killed his temple. He is filled with seething hatred for those descendants that are responsible for the Eventide. But there are other rage-filled beasts and monsters that little can rival, and all know to fear in this world. See, there is a valley, deep within the Valkyrian range, that all know to avoid, because it is under the control of a blood chaser, a pure monster known as Kavar, the living incarnate of rage and fury that all know to avoid. His valley hasn't even been mapped, for he kills and eats anything that enters his gorgeous icy lands. But there are other monsters of this world that are just as famous, but a lot subtler. A stealthy night snagger that has carved out most of the swampland within the Korovian jungle is Leakdal, a being born of the swamp and perfectly molded by it. The fumes of the swamp have affected it throughout its whole life, to the point where they blinded him. But his other senses have kicked into overdrive, and he has become a master of stealth and kills all those who make so much as a whisper within his land. Most know to avoid his vast domain within the mists of the Korovian jungle, the darkened swamps where all must be quiet. But some monsters are a bit more benevolent, to the point where they are loved. One of these so loved beasts is the blood chaser Fedir. seen as a monster. But, in reality, it is a monster slayer. See, there was a monster known as the Land Snapper. Once attacked the people of the Valkyria League, and Fadir heard that the people feared it more than them, and this would never do, so it flew into a rage and slew the giant monster. The people of this land now hold festivals in their name, and Fadir is known as a protector of this land, something it's a little stubborn about, but at the end of the day views the people of this land as its property. So of course they should venerate them. Why wouldn't they? They fear him after all, right? There are also some other loved blood chasers, too, such as Warelm, one of the most powerful dragons when it comes to supernatural effects. See, he is famed to be able to make it rain and create storms with his roar alone, and is feared, but also bizarrely loved for this reason. See, when farmers need it to rain, they often go out and curse his name in order to anger him, so that he would roar at them, making it rain. The people would then cower in fear at his almighty power, but in reality be thanking him for this blessing. But he does actually have some competition when it comes to the mantle of King of the Sky, for he is not the only one who can control the weather. There is the Ironwing, Lochjanes, who is surrounded by many myths and superstitions, and has a little bit of a rivalry with Warelm, for clear reasons. But some view him as more of a guardian and guider of the people than Warelm, who is a more force of nature. There is also a modern myth that surrounds the northern desert. See, some people think it is so hot because Lochjanes refuses to let the land of traitors be prosperous. Of course, that is mostly superstition and propaganda, but Lochjanes does have some powerful control over the weather. But there is another Ironwing who is perhaps more important and sacred to the Skaldian people, and that is the Mount of the Royal Family, Aelion. Only those close to the royal bloodline are allowed to ride him, but he is still a protector and loves the people of this land, as much as he does the monarchs. But one thing that he will always despise is tyrants. In many ways, he is the tyrant killer, the one who keeps the royal family from going too far, and is needed in this regard. He's actually more of a champion of the people, despite only being ridden by the royal lines, and quite a few queens have been eaten by this champion. But there is a dragon that is fully opposed to the ideals of Aelion, one that can truly be seen as fully evil, and that is the ancient blood chaser, Al-harag, a dark beast that is truly a monster of legend. Many people have been killed and eaten by this behemoth of the land and sky, purely because he likes to spread fear. He now resides in the once great city of Hajek, but all that remains of this place is one tower amongst the rubble, where the demon resides, as he wiped the city from the map, purely because they would not sacrifice more to him. But there is another figure that is just as scary, and this is the Night Snagger Horal. He is far from our land, which is a good thing, as he is truly a monster. But unlike Al-harag, who is physically dominant and a powerhouse, the power of Horal is in the shadows, and the stories that surround him are very much supernatural. In fact, many myths state that when he comes down to the south to our lands, he will start the end times. And because he lives where the breed known as Night Snaggers originally came from before they flew south, people think that he might be responsible for the original exodus that they had, and some even think that he might be the forefather of the species, and most can direct their lineage to him. But that's enough doom and gloom for now. How about a dragon that's name alone puts a smile on people's faces? No dragon is as beloved as the Ironwing Ullman, truly the goodest boy who cares for people and needs above all others. He saves so many people who are lost in the wild purely because he feels a little sorry for them. Truly a dragon that all love, to the point where myths surround him being lost. some people think that the world will plunge into chaos should he die. It's a bit silly to believe, but in truth I think all would shed a tear should this mighty creature die, including myself. Let's hope that never happens. But one I already feel sad for is a dragon that is the last of his kind. The once mighty champion of his clade turned depressed, sorrowful dweller in his cave is the bloodchaser Galnur. Truly a tale of man's greed, should there ever be one. The people of Sargild were getting tired of his clade destroying their cargo and transport ships, and decided genocide was the best course of action for this clade. Galnur, being the mightiest of his kind at the time, killed countless of their numbers. Whole small armies and several rulers were even wiped out, even the head of one of their noble houses. But he is but one dragon, and even he could not save his kind forever. Now he slumbers and skulks in his cave, feeling little more than spite for the world that allowed his family to die. Truly a tragic tale. But there is also the champion of the Marauders, the mount of the first one ever, in fact. The blood chaser that started endless traditions is Hellstor. The first Marauder Rongard raised him as an abandoned little hatchling, and used him as an example of the perfect bond between a dragon and their rider. Together, they reforged the tradition of marauders riding blood chasers, an art that was lost ever since their society collapsed. He is also known as a great devourer, and eats the bodies of those they kill. In fact, he even eats the bodies of his allies should they fall too. He does seem savage in this regard when he does this, but he is not stupid. He will only do so if he knows he is safe, and he has never consumed the body of one of his riders, unless they deserved it. There is also the creation of the most powerful phantom to ever live, Joldier, created by the maddening experiments of Halvingar, using the eggs of many Night Snaggers until the perfect creation was made. Joldier is a magical beast, filled with hatred and lacking any remorse for those he kills, and sadly the only survivor of Halvingar's experiments. But he wipes out entire towns of the maps. He defends the Skultar Temple as the appointed guardian of it. But many can summon him, should they wish to, and are provided with the means to do so, with the small caveat that he will claim your soul should you summon him. There is also the Ironwing champion Ordeus, the mount of one of the greatest Wingard commanders to ever live, Joldier, one of the strongest natural fighters of all time. They matched each other perfectly in many regards, and were both undefeated in a fair fight. Ordeus is the one the Wingards call in when they need a champion dragon with unmatched combat prowess, and very little, if any, dragons, even the supernatural ones, would dare fight this behemoth of might and power. And the last one I shall talk about for this volume 0 is the insane Joldier, who also survived the Eventide, but his temple did not, and he was crushed under its rubble. Even the name of his temple has been lost to history. But he was there for years and years, turning him insane. He is wild and chaotic beyond belief. Smaller phantom cults tried to save his mind many a time, and they brought him into their newer temples. But he always turned mental and killed them, as well as many of their precious relics that they held dear. So sadly, they had to let him go, back to the cold wilderness of his lost temple, where he remains alone, speaking and arguing to the shadows in his madness, thinking, deep down, this might be a dream. But unfortunately, his insanity and his loss are all too real. There are many fascinating dragons of this world, and I have only just started to scratch the surface with them. But that's enough for now of these dragons of legend. But do not fear, they're not going anywhere. In fact, they are going to outlive us all. Thank you for listening to our tales. I am the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.